So as gardeners or as farmers, some of us might not know this and some of us might not want to know this, but some weeds can be really beneficial for the garden in various types of ways, whether it's building soil, holding it together, reducing compaction, attracting a bunch of different beneficial insects, nutrient accumulation, mobility, etc., etc. And today I want to talk about one of these weeds that many of us probably encounter out in the garden or the farmscape, whatever the context may be. And I want to really kind of talk about its benefits, its positive attributes that it can really offer. And in effect, why I let it grow in my garden. All right, so today we are talking about smartweeds. They can go by a bunch of different names. And so I have a S in parentheses here because smartweeds can make a multiple species in this Polygonum genus, right? So we have kind of a variety of different types of plants that can fall under that category, right? So on our part, we kind of have to do our own research to kind of find what species we have in our environment, because it may be different, especially if we want to know if that particular species is native or not. Because yes, some of these species are in fact native to North America. And that can be key and important especially with some of those ecological and relationships, like with those of insects, which we'll kind of talk about in a little bit. Although some of the non-native ones may be similar enough that there could be a good deal of carryover, of overlap between the beneficial insect species that both of these native and non-native plants may support. So this plant obviously tends to grow in disturbed areas, right? So of course, when I'm planting my garden, I get a few of these plants to come up. They're never like super aggressive, crazy weeds that just outcompete and grow all over the place, but I do get a few here and there, and I tend to let them grow there, right? Unless if they're outcompeting plants because they're growing too close to them, then maybe I'll pull them up accordingly. But for the most part, I will let them grow, right? Because I know that they will go to flower. I know that they potentially may be having a beneficial effect on the soil, and then also, like I said, with the flowering and those beneficial insects. And another thing to keep in mind as well is that these plants can attract Japanese beetles, right? They're like one of the big plants that Japanese beetles really seek out. So they'll seek out the smartweeds, they'll seek out grapes, both cultivated and wild, common evening primrose, hollyhock, plants like that. So this could be a means of an effective trap crop, right? We can then collect those Japanese beetles and proceed accordingly in potentially reducing their populations, putting them in jars of water or whatever, which I have done at times, certain years, but I have not had to do that at all this year, right? The Japanese beetles are pretty low in population this year, which is interesting, and I'm not complaining. The other thing is that these smartweeds are in the same family as buckwheat, right? So they are relatives. The buckwheat is a common cover crop used for beneficial pollinators also, right? That's why we can kind of see some carryover with that, which kind of leads me to believe that there is probably kind of an overlapping just beneficial effect for pollinators, over all of these different species, most likely, at least in my opinion or how I see it. But the buckwheat also has this other special quality, is that it can actually, when it takes root into the soil, it starts forming relationships with certain types of beneficial bacteria that can solubilize phosphorus, right, and make it more bioavailable in the plants, right? I mean in the soil, which makes it more available to the plants and accessible to the plants. Because phosphorus is not very accessible in the soil. It's usually pretty locked up in that soil profile, and the plants can't really get it. So these plants can be really key, and partly why it's used as a cover crop, right? Like before certain crops that might be able to use a good amount of phosphorus, maybe like strawberries or something like that. And it's possible that this phosphorus solubilizing effect may also translate to some of, if not most or all of these Polygonum species, right? There is probably always exceptions, but it's possible that some of these smartweeds may have that same beneficial effect as well, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind in terms of soil health and how these plants may help out in another level, right? Other than just attracting insects, which in and of itself is a huge and important benefit, which we are about to talk about now. Right, so what kinds of insects can these smartweed plants attract? Whole bunch of different bees, right? So andrenid bees, leaf cutters, bumble, honeybees, digger bees, and halictid bees, among others. So wide range of pollinator insect species right there. So that can be a huge benefit, intermixing some of these plants or these weeds with other plants that are insect pollinated, right, and need insect pollination to produce good crops, right? You know, maybe sweet peppers like bell peppers might be a good companion crop, I would wonder, with some of these Polygonum species, right? Because bell peppers really need, I believe, like pollination from a specific type of bee. I think the bumblebee is a primary pollinator of these pepper plants, and so having an ecosystem that supports that habitat for that bumblebee may be a good idea for pepper production. So we can also attract a bunch of different flies, right? Tachinid flies are super beneficial predators. Tachinids can actually prey upon the Japanese beetles, right? Well, not directly, but they will lay eggs on the Japanese beetles, and their larvae will consume the Japanese beetle. And tachinid flies are generalist predators. They will go after a whole bunch of different insects, not just the Japanese beetle. But they can be potentially somewhat useful for that. We also have the flesh flies and also syrphid flies, right? Syrphid flies are really beneficial for helping to control some, especially some of those smaller insects like aphids, mites, psyllids, you know, some of those different insects, maybe some caterpillars in their younger stages, things like that. Also some different beneficial wasps, right, like the spacid wasps, spider wasps, and vespid wasps. And then it can also attract some potential pests, insect pests, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So it can attract the flea beetle, sawfly, aphid, weevil, some of the other leaf beetles, and grasshoppers, right? And so these can be food for other beneficial insects, helping to support their life. So that's the whole thing, right? And if you have insects going after certain weeds rather than some of your crops, I know that's kind of a popular concept in certain areas of some forms of regenerative agriculture, right? That can be a good thing, right? So these pests can be beneficial in supporting the lives of these other beneficial insects, right? Providing them another aspect of, you know, diversity, you know, food and things like that. So we can also attract certain types of moth and butterfly species. We can, of course, if you want, read more about this on Illinois Wildflowers. I have a link to their site for one of the smartweed species here down in the description, so definitely check that out. Fantastic resource. Thank you so much for checking out this video on the smartweed. Of course, this comprises a whole set of multiple species, so you know, it kind of depends on what species you have. Some may be native, some may not be native, but there can or there may be overlapping benefits in the different types of beneficial insects that these plants can attract, and also potentially with their relationships to soil. And so I let this plant grow in my garden because I know that it can offer so many different positive benefits, attracting a bunch of different beneficial insects, harboring some of the pests, which is also actually important, as counterintuitive as it may seem, and just adding to that biodiversity in above ground, and it should also correlate to more diversity below ground with the microbes, the microfauna, and things like that. I will pull it up if it's like encroaching on another plant or, you know, crop or whatever, but here and there I will let some of them grow down the course of a garden bed because of all those positive attributes, right? And they look pretty nice too. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please go ahead and subscribe, become a channel member by clicking the join button down below, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.